Here's the thing about coming home early. It's either a blessing or a curse, and there's no in between. Apparently, mine was the listen to your husband plan your replacement like he's ordering a new car variety. Fun times. My name is Thea Ramsey. I'm 36, a corporate tax attorney in downtown Chicago, and I just discovered that my marriage was basically a limited-time offer with an expiration date I wasn't aware of. My husband, Barrett, is 39, real estate developer, CrossFit enthusiast, and part-time Judas, apparently. We'd been married for 8 years. No kids by mutual agreement, or so I thought. Turns out, it was just his agreement. The dude wanted flexibility for other ventures. It was a Wednesday in mid-October. I left the office at 2 p.m. because our biggest client decided to reschedule at the last minute. Classic. I figured I'd surprise Barrett. Maybe we'd catch an early dinner downtown. The universe really loves its irony, doesn't it? I parked in our driveway. Yeah, we live in one of those renovated brownstones in Lincoln Park that screams, "We're doing well, but not that well," and let myself in quietly. Force of habit. Barrett was always on conference calls, and I'd learned to move through our house like a ninja to avoid the death glare he'd throw when I interrupted his important business discussions. That's when I heard him. In his office. Door half closed, voice low but urgent. The kind of tone that makes your gut clench before your brain catches up. I need to end this before she figures it out. The timing's crucial here. Pause. I know. But if she finds out first, I'm screwed in the settlement. Her salary's almost double mine, and she's got documentation on everything. I stood there in our marble foyer, the one I'd insisted on during renovations because I'm apparently excellent at making sure my betrayal happens in aesthetically pleasing surroundings, feeling my blood pressure spike like I'd just downed 4 espressos. Barrett continued, oblivious. Sienna's already looking at apartments for us. Found a great place in River North. 2 bedrooms, modern kitchen, close to her studio. Yeah, the kid would have his own room. The kid. I'm sorry, what? Barrett. Kids ruin careers and we're focusing on us. Ramsey had a kid? With someone named Sienna, who apparently had a studio, whatever that meant. My brain was doing that thing where it processes information approximately 3 beats behind reality. Like when you're watching a movie and the sound doesn't sync with the video. Except this was my life. And the audio was, "Your husband has a secret family." And the video was me standing in my own house, feeling like I'd wandered onto someone else's disaster. Barrett walked out of his office scrolling through his phone, and when he looked up and saw me, the man literally flinched. His phone almost went airborne. He actually stumbled backward, grabbed the doorframe, and went full statue mode. If deer in headlights was a person, he'd just won the championship. Thea. His voice came out strangled. "You're home. Give this man a medal for stating the obvious." I just stood there with my briefcase, my sensible work pumps, and my apparently non-existent marriage, staring at him. I could have said a million things. Screamed, thrown something, demanded answers. Instead, I smiled. That same smile I use when opposing counsel thinks they've found a loophole in my client's taxes, and I'm about to demolish their entire argument with a single precedent. "Yep," I said, voice honey-sweet. "Surprise." Barrett's face went through about 15 emotions in 3 seconds. Panic, guilt, calculation, more panic. Then he tried for casual, which was like watching someone try to act natural while their pants are on fire. How long have you been standing there? Long enough? I walked past him toward the kitchen, set my briefcase on the counter. Long enough to hear about Sienna's excellent taste in River North apartments, and about the kid. Congratulations, by the way. When were you planning to mention your son? At Thanksgiving? Christmas? Our 10-year anniversary? See? Here's what happens when you're a lawyer. You don't fall apart immediately. You compartmentalize. You file the emotional devastation under deal with later, and you focus on information gathering. It's a superpower, really. A deeply unhealthy superpower that leads to stress eating and wine over consumption. But still. Barrett opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He looked like a very guilty, very panicked fish. "Thea, I can explain." "Oh, I'm counting on it. I poured myself a glass of water because my hands needed something to do that wasn't strangling him. But before you start, let me save us both some time. Don't insult me by saying it's not what it sounds like. Don't tell me you were going to tell me. And definitely don't say this just happened, because kids take approximately 9 months plus however old this one is, so the math doesn't work in your favor. He slumped against the counter. For a second, I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Then I remembered the whole secret child thing and the feeling evaporated faster than my respect for him. His name is Oliver, Barrett said quietly. He's 3. Sienna's a yoga instructor. We met at the gym 4 years ago. 4 years. 4 years. This man had been running a parallel life for 4 years, and I hadn't noticed. How was that possible? How do you not notice your husband has a whole entire child for 3 years? Then again, I worked 60-hour weeks. Barrett traveled constantly for property acquisitions. We were that couple who scheduled sex like business meetings and called it keeping the spark alive. We hadn't really seen each other in probably 2 years. We'd just been existing in the same space. God, we were such a cliché. You have a 3-year-old son, I repeated, because saying it out loud might make it feel real. Spoiler, it didn't. And you were planning to leave me for his mother, but you wanted to time it right for, what, tax purposes? Optimal settlement positioning? Barrett had the audacity to look offended. It's not like that. Then what's it like, Barrett? Explain it to me. Use small words if you need to. He ran his hand through his hair. That nervous tic he'd always had when he was in trouble. I'd seen it when he forgot our anniversary, when he made a bad investment, when he backed into my car in the driveway. Never thought I'd see it during the "I've been living a double life" conversation, but here we were. I didn't plan this, he started, which was already a terrible beginning. Sienna and I, it was supposed to be casual. Then she got pregnant, and she wanted to keep the baby. And I couldn't just abandon my kid. But you could abandon your wife? I thought I could handle both. Keep everyone happy. But it got complicated. Complicated, I echoed. You think it got complicated? Barrett, you have a secret child. You've been lying to me for 4 years. You've been planning to divorce me based on timing that benefits your financial situation. That's not complicated. That's calculated. He had nothing to say to that. Smart choice. I took a sip of water, buying myself time to think. My brain was simultaneously exploding and working overtime. The attorney part of me was already cataloging evidence, thinking about Illinois divorce law, considering asset division. The wife part of me, the part that still wore the wedding ring he'd put on my finger in that beautiful ceremony in Napa, was crumbling in real time. Here's what's going to happen, I said, voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. You're going to sleep in the guest room. Tomorrow, you're going to move to a hotel. And you're not going to touch any of our joint accounts, transfer any assets, or make any major purchases until I figure out what the hell I'm dealing with. Thea? No. I held up my hand. You don't get to Thea me right now. You had 4 years to Thea me, to tell me the truth, to give me the option to choose whether I wanted to stay in this marriage. You took that choice away from me, so now I'm taking the choices back. Got it? He nodded, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Good. He should feel small. He'd just revealed himself to be exactly that. I grabbed my briefcase and headed upstairs to our bedroom. My bedroom now, I guess. Behind me, I heard Barrett still standing in the kitchen, probably calculating his next move. Always calculating that one. Inside the bedroom, I locked the door, set down my briefcase, and sat on the edge of our California king bed. The one we'd picked out together 3 years ago. The one where we'd talked about our future, made plans, had lazy Sunday mornings before reality and work schedules took over. And then, finally, alone in the silence, I let myself feel it. The betrayal, the humiliation, the rage, all of it crashed over me like Lake Michigan during a storm. But here's the thing about being a tax attorney. I'm really, really good at finding loopholes, exploiting weaknesses, and building airtight cases. Barrett had just handed me the biggest case of my career. He wanted a strategic exit? Fine. I'd show him strategic. I'd show him exactly what happens when you underestimate a woman who spent 3 years of law school learning how to destroy people's arguments and 10 years in practice perfecting it. I pulled out my laptop. Time to do what I do best. Research, document, and prepare for total war. Because if Barrett thought he was good at timing, he was about to learn that I'd been counting down to his downfall from the moment I heard him say, "Before she figures it out." "Joke's on you, honey. She figured it out." The next 3 days were a masterclass in acting normal while internally planning the legal equivalent of a nuclear strike. Barrett moved to a hotel Thursday morning, the Embassy Suites downtown, which felt appropriate since our marriage had apparently been operating on diplomatic relations for years. He tried to talk to me before he left. Stood there in our foyer with his hastily packed suitcase, looking like a sad puppy who'd been caught eating the trash. "Thea, can we just—" "No." I didn't even look up from my coffee. I was doing the crossword puzzle like my entire life hadn't imploded. Multitasking. "I want you to know I never meant to hurt you." I finally looked at him then. "Barrett, you had a child with another woman and hid it from me for 3 years. Your intent is irrelevant. Your actions are what count. And your actions are telling me you're a liar, a cheat, and apparently not great at operational security, considering I found out by coming home early on a random Wednesday." He flinched. "Good. What are you going to do? Get a divorce, obviously. Beyond that, you'll find out when I'm ready for you to find out. Now, if you'll excuse me, 7 down is really bothering me." He left. I finished my crossword. Then I called my best friend Juliet, who's a family law attorney at one of the top firms in Chicago. If I was going to burn Barrett's life down, I was going to do it legally and thoroughly. "So," Jules said, when I'd finished explaining everything over the phone, "Barrett has a secret 3-year-old named Oliver with a yoga instructor named Sienna. He was planning to leave you but wanted strategic timing for the divorce settlement, and you found out because you came home early from work. That's the Cliff's Notes version, yeah. Thea, this is the most dramatic thing that's happened to you since you accidentally wore 2 different shoes to court. In my defense, they were both black. One was a pump, one was a flat. Not the point, Jules." She laughed, but then her voice turned serious. "Okay, here's what we're doing. I'm recommending you to my colleague Marcus Bennett. He's the best divorce attorney in Chicago, and he's absolutely ruthless in a way that I think you'll appreciate right now. He'll destroy Barrett, legally speaking. I like the sound of that. Also, we need to lock down all your financials. You said Barrett's a developer? Yeah, mostly commercial properties. He's got a few projects going right now. Then he's probably got assets you don't even know about. We need a forensic accountant. I'll recommend someone. But Thea, this is going to get messy. Are you ready for that?" I thought about Barrett's face when he realized I'd heard everything. The way he'd tried to calculate his way out of it. The fact that he'd built an entire secret life and thought he could just discard me when it was convenient. "Jules, I've been ready since Wednesday at 2:17 p.m. Marcus Bennett's office was exactly what you'd expect from Chicago's most notorious divorce attorney. Sleek, modern, with a view of the Chicago River that probably cost more per month than most people's mortgages. The man himself was in his mid-50s, silver hair, sharp suit, and eyes that said he'd seen every terrible thing a spouse could do and was no longer surprised by human depravity. I liked him immediately. "Mrs. Ramsey," he said, shaking my hand, "Jules speaks highly of you. Says you're a tax attorney? Corporate tax litigation? Yes. Then you understand that divorce is war by other means." He gestured for me to sit. "Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out, no matter how small or embarrassing you think it is." I told him. All of it. The phone call I'd overheard, the 3-year-old son, Sienna the yoga instructor, the River North apartment, Barrett's strategic timing. When I finished, Marcus was making notes on his legal pad, nodding occasionally. "Okay," he said finally. "Here's the good news. Your husband is an idiot. The bad news for him, anyway. Good news for you. He's been planning this divorce, which means there's a trail. Texts, emails, financial transactions. He's been sloppy because he didn't think you'd find out yet." "How do you know he's been sloppy?" Marcus smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Because if he'd been smart, he would have already moved assets, changed passwords, destroyed evidence. The fact that you still have access to joint accounts tells me he hasn't started his endgame yet. He was planning to, but you caught him early. That's leverage. What kind of leverage? The kind that means we get to dictate terms. But first, we need to gather evidence. Everything. I'm going to have you work with a forensic accountant and a private investigator. They're going to find out exactly what Barrett's been doing with his money, where he's been spending his time, and whether there are any other surprises we need to know about. You think there might be more? Mrs. Ramsey, in my experience, when someone's been living a double life for 4 years, there's always more. The forensic accountant's name was Eloise Park, and she had the kind of focused intensity that made me think she probably found tax fraud in her sleep and woke up excited about it. We met at a coffee shop in the Loop because she said she thinks better surrounded by caffeine and chaos. So, she said, pulling out a laptop that looked like it could hack government databases, let's talk about your husband's finances. Walk me through what you know. I explained Barrett's real estate development business, the properties he'd been working on, his typical income. Eloise listened, typing occasionally, asking clarifying questions. Do you have access to his business accounts? Some. We keep separate business finances, but we have joint personal accounts. Good. I'll need login information for anything you can access. Also, credit card statements, tax returns for the last 5 years, any property deeds, investment portfolios, basically, anything financial. I can get all of that. Perfect. Now here's what I'm looking for. Unusual transactions, cash withdrawals, transfers to accounts you don't recognize, purchases that don't match his stated lifestyle. If he's been supporting another family, he's been paying for it somehow. And if he's been preparing to divorce you, he might have been hiding assets. Over the next week, Eloise and I met 3 more times. Each time, she'd found something new. Small things at first. Cash withdrawals that didn't match Barrett's usual patterns. A recurring payment to something called Serenity Wellness Studio. Sienna's yoga studio, it turned out. Then bigger things. A bank account I didn't know about with over $80,000 in it. Property holdings listed under an LLC I'd never heard of. Your husband, Eloise said during our 4th meeting, has been systematically moving money for at least 2 years. Not huge amounts at any one time. He's smarter than that, but consistently. It adds up. I estimate he's hidden approximately $300,000 in assets so far. I felt my jaw literally drop. $300,000? Give or take. And that's just what I've found so far. There might be more. $300,000. That was my annual salary. That was years of savings. That was supposed to be our future, and Barrett had been siphoning it off like a corporate embezzler. I called Marcus immediately. He hid $300,000? Marcus's voice had taken on that gleeful tone that lawyers get when they realize they have an airtight case. Thea, this is perfect. Illinois is an equitable distribution state, which means assets are supposed to be divided fairly. If Barrett's been hiding assets, that's dissipation of marital property. Not only do you get a bigger share to compensate, but judges hate that. It makes him look dishonest and manipulative. Because he is dishonest and manipulative. Exactly. Now here's what we're going to do. We're going to let him think he's getting away with it. Don't confront him yet. Let him keep digging his own grave. The private investigator is also gathering information on his relationship with Sienna. Once we have everything documented, we file for divorce and hit him with all of it at once. How long will that take? 2, maybe 3 more weeks. Can you wait that long? I thought about Barrett in his hotel room, probably texting Sienna about how his mean wife was being unreasonable. I thought about Oliver, a 3-year-old who'd done nothing wrong but had a father who was terrible at being a human. I thought about Sienna, who might not even know I existed until recently. I can wait, I said. I'm good at patience when I know there's a payoff coming. The private investigator's report arrived 2 weeks later, and it was comprehensive. Barrett and Sienna had been together for 4 years. They'd met at her yoga studio when she was teaching a executive wellness class that Barrett's company had sponsored. The relationship had started as an affair, became serious when she got pregnant, and had basically been a second marriage ever since. Barrett had been supporting Sienna and Oliver financially. The yoga studio didn't pay great, apparently. and had been planning to move in with them officially once the divorce was finalized. He'd told Sienna that he and I were separated but still living together for financial reasons, which was a creative rewrite of reality. The investigator had also found something else. Barrett had been telling people in his professional circle that he was divorced. Colleagues, clients, potential investors. He'd been operating as a single man in his business life while still being married to me in his personal life. I showed the report to Marcus. "This keeps getting better," Marcus said. "Or worse, depending on your perspective. But for our purposes, better. We can demonstrate that Barrett has been systematically lying, hiding assets, and planning to divorce you in a way that would benefit him financially while leaving you in the dark. That's not going to play well in court. When do we file?" "Monday. I'll have the papers drawn up by end of business today. We're going to ask for temporary orders that freeze all assets, require Barrett to pay temporary support, and give you exclusive possession of the marital home. Then we're going to discovery the hell out of him and expose every single thing he's been hiding." I felt something in my chest that I hadn't felt in weeks. Satisfaction. Not happiness. That was still a long way off. But satisfaction that Barrett's carefully constructed plan was about to collapse spectacularly. "Do it," I said. Marcus grinned. "With pleasure." The divorce papers were served to Barrett on a Monday morning at 8:43 a.m. I know this because the process server texted me a photo of Barrett's face when he opened the door of his hotel room. The man looked like he'd been slapped with a frozen fish. By 9:15 a.m., my phone was ringing. Barrett's name on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. He called 4 more times. I ignored all of them. Finally, he texted, "Barrett, we need to talk about this. You're being unreasonable." Me. "No, I'm being an attorney. There's a difference." Barrett. "Thea, please, can we at least discuss this like adults?" Me. "You mean like adults who tell their spouses they have secret children? That kind of adult conversation? Because I'm pretty sure we missed that opportunity 4 years ago." He didn't respond to that. The temporary orders hearing was scheduled for the following week. In the meantime, Marcus and his team were building what he called the most beautiful case of marital misconduct I've seen in 15 years. Eloise had finished her forensic analysis and found even more hidden assets. An investment account in Barrett's mother's name that he controlled. Another property in Indiana listed under his business partner's LLC. Total hidden assets? Marcus told me over the phone. Approximately $485,000. Plus, he's been underreporting his income to you. His development company is doing much better than he's been saying. $485,000. I sat in my office, my real office, where I did actual work and didn't lie to my colleagues about my marital status, and felt the full weight of Barrett's betrayal sink in. It wasn't just the affair. It wasn't just Oliver. It was the systematic, calculated theft of our shared future. But here's where things got interesting. Because while I was planning to legally demolish Barrett, I got a call from an unexpected source. "Is this Thea Ramsey?" A woman's voice, young, uncertain. "Yes." "Who's this?" "My name is Sienna Cole. We need to talk." I should have hung up. Marcus would have told me to hang up. Talking to your husband's mistress before a divorce is finalized is generally a bad idea. But curiosity won out. "I'm listening. Can we meet? In person? There's something you need to know about Barrett. Something I just found out." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Sienna Cole in a Starbucks in Wicker Park. She was exactly what you'd expect. 28, blonde, yoga-toned, wearing Lululemon and looking stressed. Oliver, the 3-year-old who'd inadvertently blown up my marriage, was with Barrett, apparently. "Thank you for meeting me," Sienna said. She looked like she'd been crying. "I know this is weird. Beyond weird. That's one word for it. I need you to know. I didn't know you and Barrett were still together. Not really together. He told me you were separated. That you'd both agreed to stay married on paper until some business deal went through. But that you were basically roommates. He showed me paperwork that looked official. Paperwork? A separation agreement, signed by both of you, dated 2 years ago. I felt my blood pressure spike. Sienna, I never signed a separation agreement. We were never separated. Barrett has been lying to you. Her face crumbled. I knew it. God, I knew something was off. But I wanted to believe him. We have a son together. I thought we were building a life. Despite myself, I felt a twinge of sympathy. We'd both been played by the same man. Why did you want to meet me? Sienna pulled out her phone, opened her messages, and slid it across the table. Because of this. I read the conversation. It was between Barrett and someone named Jade. Recent messages, very recent, from yesterday. Barrett. Once the Thea situation is handled, we can move forward with our plans. Jade. And what about S and the kid? Barrett. Manageable. She's been useful, but she's getting clingy. I'll figure something out. Jade. You always do. Can't wait to finally be together properly. Barrett. Soon. Promise. Love you. I stared at the phone. Then at Sienna. Who's Jade? His business partner's sister. I did some digging after I saw these messages. They've been involved for about 6 months. He's been telling her he's leaving me. The room spun slightly. Barrett hadn't just had one affair. He'd had at least 2, possibly more. Sienna and I, both of us, were just way stations in Barrett's endless quest for, what? Validation? Variety? A complete inability to be a decent human being? Why are you showing me this? I asked. Sienna's jaw tightened. Because Barrett doesn't get to blow up our lives and walk away unscathed. I have a 3-year-old son who deserves a father who's honest. You have years of marriage that he threw away. And Jade? She has no idea what she's getting into. Barrett needs to face consequences for once in his life. I looked at this woman, this yoga instructor who'd been sleeping with my husband for 4 years, who had his child, who'd believed his lies, and felt something unexpected. Respect. She was angrier than I'd seen anyone in weeks, and she was channeling it into something useful. What do you want to do? I asked. I want to help you destroy him. Legally, financially, socially, everything. He's been playing all of us, and I'm done being played. I sat back in my chair. Marcus would have a stroke if he knew I was having this conversation. But sometimes the best legal strategy requires unconventional allies. Tell me everything you know about Barrett's finances, I said. And I mean everything. Over the next week, Sienna became an unexpected asset in my divorce case. She had information I didn't, details about Barrett's business dealings, cash payments he'd made, properties he'd mentioned buying that weren't on any official records. She'd also kept meticulous records of every dollar he'd given her, every promise he'd made, every lie he'd told. Marcus was initially horrified when I told him I'd been meeting with Sienna. Then he saw her documentation and changed his tune. This is actually brilliant, he admitted. She's essentially a witness to Barrett's financial misconduct, and if she's willing to testify about the money he gave her, we can trace where it came from. Most of it was probably marital funds. She'll testify, I confirmed. She's motivated. What about the Jade situation? We're going to let that play out naturally. If Barrett's planning to leave Sienna for Jade, he'll eventually show his hand, and when he does, it'll demonstrate a pattern of behavior that no judge will look kindly on. The temporary orders hearing was fascinating, in the way that watching a car accident is fascinating. Barrett showed up with his attorney, some corporate guy who clearly didn't specialize in family law, expecting a routine procedural hearing. What he got was me, Marcus, and a nuclear bomb's worth of evidence. Marcus presented the forensic accounting report, the hidden assets, the secret bank accounts, the underreported income. Barrett's attorney tried to sputter objections, but the documentation was ironclad. Then Marcus brought up the affair with Sienna, the secret child, and chef's kiss, the texts between Barrett and Jade that proved he'd been juggling multiple relationships. Barrett's face went through more colors than a mood ring. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Justice Kwan, who'd apparently seen every terrible thing divorcing spouses could do to each other, was not amused. "Mr. Ramsey," she said, voice dripping with contempt, "you've hidden assets, maintained extramarital relationships, misrepresented your financial situation, and lied to multiple people about your marital status. I'm granting Mrs. Ramsey's request for temporary orders." All assets are frozen. You'll pay temporary maintenance and reimburse her for half of what you've hidden. And Mr. Ramsey, I'm going to be watching your case very closely going forward. It was beautiful. It was poetry. It was everything I'd been working toward. Barrett left the courtroom looking like he'd been hit by a truck. I left feeling like I'd just won the first battle in a war I was absolutely going to win. Outside the courthouse, Marcus turned to me. That went better than expected. What happens now? Now we prepare for the final trial. We gather more evidence, depose Barrett and his associates, and build a case that ensures you get what you deserve, both financially and in terms of vindication. How long? 3 to 4 months, probably. Think you can wait that long? I thought about Barrett's face in that courtroom. The panic. The realization that his carefully constructed lies had collapsed. The understanding that he'd underestimated me catastrophically. Marcus, I said, I've waited 8 years for Barrett to be honest with me. I can wait 4 months to watch him pay for not being honest. He grinned. You know, when Jules recommended you to me, she said you were one of the smartest attorneys she knew. She was right. Thanks, though I'm pretty sure I'm about to win the award for most dramatic divorce case of the year at the next Chicago Bar Association meeting. You'd be surprised. This barely cracks the top 10. We went our separate ways. I headed back to my office where my actual job, the one that didn't involve destroying my ex-husband, awaited. But before I got in my car, I checked my phone. There was a message from Sienna. Sienna. Heard it went well today. Good. He deserves everything coming to him. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, me. We were both victims of the same con man, but we're not victims anymore. We're plaintiffs. Big difference. Sienna. I like that. Plaintiffs. Not victims. Me. Exactly. See you at the deposition. I got in my car and drove home. To my house now, since Barrett was barred from the property by court order. Feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Powerful. Barrett had thought he could control the narrative, the timeline, the outcome. He'd thought wrong. And the best part? We were just getting started. The next 3 months were a masterclass in legal warfare. Marcus and his team deposed everyone. Barrett, his business partner, his accountant, even poor Jade, who showed up looking shell-shocked and left looking traumatized after realizing she'd been dating a man with more red flags than a Soviet parade. Each deposition revealed something new and terrible. Barrett had been embezzling from his own company to fund his various relationships. He'd lied on loan applications. He'd misrepresented property values to investors. The man was basically a one-person crime wave wearing Patagonia vests and expensive watches. But the real vindication came during Barrett's deposition. Marcus eviscerated him. For 6 hours, he walked Barrett through every lie, every hidden account, every affair. By the end, Barrett looked like he'd aged 10 years. Mr. Ramsey, Marcus said, voice casual like he was asking about the weather. Can you explain why you told Sienna Cole that you were separated from your wife when you were, in fact, still cohabiting and presenting yourself as married? I wanted to spare her feelings. By lying to her? It's complicated. Is it also complicated that you told Jade Mercier you were single? And that you told investors you were divorced? And that you told your wife that you weren't having affairs? That's a lot of complications, Mr. Ramsey. Almost like you have a pattern of dishonesty. Barrett's attorney tried to object, but the damage was done. Marcus had methodically established that Barrett was a liar, a cheat, and an unreliable narrator of his own life. The coup de grace came when Eloise presented her final forensic analysis. She'd found everything, every hidden account, every sketchy transaction, every penny Barrett had tried to squirrel away. The total came to just over $600,000 in hidden or misappropriated marital assets. $600,000. Your Honor, Marcus said during the final trial 3 weeks later, this isn't just a case of marital infidelity. This is systematic financial fraud perpetrated by a man who viewed his wife as an obstacle to his lifestyle rather than a partner. Mr. Ramsey has demonstrated a pattern of deception, manipulation, and self-interest that warrants punitive measures. Justice Kwan listened to all the evidence, reviewed the documentation, and then delivered a ruling that was so satisfying I almost cried. I'm awarding Mrs. Ramsey 75% of all marital assets, including all hidden assets. Mr. Ramsey will pay her attorney's fees, which total approximately $87,000. He will also pay maintenance for 3 years. And Mr. Ramsey? I'm referring your conduct to the State Bar and to the IRS for potential investigation. This level of deception suggests patterns that may extend beyond this marriage. Barrett's face was ashen. His attorney looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. I sat there, next to Marcus, trying to maintain professional composure when what I really wanted to do was fist pump like I'd just scored the winning touchdown. 75% of assets. Attorney's fees covered. Maintenance for 3 years. And, the cherry on top, referrals to organizations that could make Barrett's life significantly more complicated. It was perfect. It was beautiful. It was exactly what I'd been working toward for 4 months. Outside the courtroom, Marcus shook my hand. Congratulations, Thea. That's one of the best outcomes I've seen in years. Couldn't have done it without you. Or Eloise. Or, weirdly, Sienna. Speaking of which, he gestured down the hall where Sienna was standing with her own attorney. She'd filed for child support and paternity establishment, and from what I'd heard, she was getting everything she deserved. Barrett would be paying support for Oliver until he was 18. I walked over to her. We'd developed an odd friendship over the past few months. Trauma bonding, my therapist called it. We'd probably never be close, but we had a mutual respect forged in the fires of Barrett's spectacular dishonesty. You won, she said simply. We both won, I corrected. You're getting child support and full custody. That's a victory. Yeah, Oliver deserves better than Barrett anyway. Hopefully he'll grow up knowing that actions have consequences. She paused. For what it's worth, I'm glad I met you. Not the circumstances, obviously, but you showed me what it looks like to stand up for yourself, to demand what you're worth. Right back at you. You could have stayed silent. You chose to help instead. We hugged, which was surreal considering 4 months ago I'd wanted to throw things at her. Funny how life works. The fallout from the divorce rippled through Barrett's life like an earthquake through a house of cards. His business partnership dissolved when his partner discovered the embezzlement. 2 investors pulled out of projects when they learned about his dishonesty. The country club, his beloved country club where he'd pretended to play tennis while actually having an affair, quietly suggested he might be happier elsewhere after word spread about the divorce details. Jade, predictably, dumped him approximately 30 seconds after the trial ended. I heard through the grapevine that she left him a voicemail that consisted entirely of creative insults questioning his intelligence, integrity, and anatomical adequacy. Good for her. Barrett ended up moving to a 1-bedroom apartment in Schaumburg, a far cry from our Lincoln Park brownstone or the River North luxury apartment he'd been planning. His car got repossessed after he fell behind on payments. His business limped along but never recovered its former success. Meanwhile, I thrived. The brownstone sold for an excellent price. Turned out Lincoln Park real estate was still hot, and I bought a gorgeous condo in the Gold Coast with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Started dating a fellow attorney named Quentin who thought my divorce story was the most impressive legal demolition I've ever heard, and seemed to find competence attractive, which was refreshing. I also got a promotion at my firm, partner track. Turns out, channeling rage into work productivity is an excellent career strategy. My billable hours had never been higher. But the real satisfaction came 6 months post-divorce when I ran into Barrett at a Whole Foods. He was in the checkout line with a sad little basket containing frozen dinners and cheap beer. I had fresh flowers, good cheese, expensive wine, and ingredients for a dinner party I was hosting that weekend. He saw me first. I watched him recognize me, watched the parade of emotions cross his face. Embarrassment, regret, something that might have been longing. I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just nothing. Thea, he said as I walked past with my overflowing cart. You look great. Thanks. I genuinely couldn't think of anything else to say to him. He'd become irrelevant to my life so completely that seeing him was like running into a person you vaguely remembered from college but couldn't quite place. I wanted to say, he started. Barrett, don't. I kept my voice neutral. Whatever you want to say. It's too late and I don't need to hear it. You made your choices. I made mine. We're done. I left him standing there in the checkout line looking diminished. Not because I'd destroyed him, though I had, legally speaking, but because he'd destroyed himself. He'd built his entire life on lies and manipulation, and when it finally collapsed, he had nothing left to hold up. As I loaded groceries into my car, paid for with my money, registered in my name only, I felt something unexpected. Gratitude. Not for Barrett, obviously, but for the whole terrible experience. It had forced me to examine my life, recognize what I'd been tolerating, and rebuild something better. The woman who'd come home early that Wednesday in October and overheard her husband's betrayal? She'd been someone who worked 80-hour weeks, never questioned her marriage, and assumed loyalty because she'd been loyal. The woman loading groceries into her car 6 months later? She worked reasonable hours, had standards, and knew exactly what she was worth. That's the funny thing about betrayal. It can destroy you or it can refine you. Barrett thought it would destroy me. Joke's on him. It just made me sharper. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, I found myself at a rooftop bar in River North with Juliet, celebrating her birthday. The Chicago skyline glittered around us. Lake Michigan stretched dark and infinite beyond. And I was on my third old-fashioned feeling philosophical in that way you do when good alcohol meets good company. Can I tell you something weird? I said to Jules. Weirder than your ex-husband having a secret family and multiple affairs while embezzling from his own company? Different kind of weird. I think I'm grateful it all happened. Jules raised her eyebrows. The Barrett situation? You're grateful for that dumpster fire? Not grateful it happened exactly. Grateful for what I learned from it. I swirled my drink, watching the ice catch the light. I spent 8 years in a marriage where I was working 80 hours a week, assuming everything was fine because I was too busy to notice it wasn't. Barrett's betrayal forced me to actually look at my life and realize how much I'd been settling for. You weren't settling. You were succeeding. Partner track at 36 is impressive. Professionally, sure. But personally, I was half asleep, just going through motions. Now, I'm awake. I'm present. I'm building a life I actually want instead of one that just happens to me. Jules clinked her glass against mine. Look at you. Growing as a person. I'm proud. Also, revenge is surprisingly therapeutic. Highly recommend legally destroying someone who wronged you. And there's the Thea I know. She laughed. Whatever happened with Sienna? We still text occasionally. She's doing well. Oliver's 4 now, thriving in preschool. She started her own yoga studio. Turns out Barrett's child support is substantial when you've documented everything and have a good attorney. She's dating someone new, a teacher. Says he's boring in all the right ways. And Barrett? I shrugged. Last I heard, he's still in Schaumburg, still trying to rebuild his business. The IRS thing didn't help. Turns out tax evasion is frowned upon. Who knew? I grinned. He lost his real estate license for 6 months, which for a developer is basically a death sentence. Had to work construction for a while. Ouch. Yeah? Consequences are inconvenient like that. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city lights shimmer. Chicago on a perfect October evening is magical. That brief window when the weather's still warm enough for rooftop bars, but cool enough that you're not melting into your seat. The kind of night that makes you forget about the brutal winters and remember why you actually chose to live in a city where the wind has a personal vendetta against your face 6 months a year. You know what I learned? I said eventually. People always talk about closure like it's this thing someone gives you. The person who wronged you apologizes, explains, makes it right, and then you get closure. But that's garbage. Closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you create for yourself. Deep thoughts at rooftop bars. This is quality content. I'm serious. Barrett never apologized. Not really. He tried that day at Whole Foods, but it was hollow. Just words to make himself feel better. And I realized I didn't need his apology. Didn't need him to understand what he'd done wrong. I just needed to decide I was done letting him take up space in my head. Jules studied me. And are you? Done? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah, I am. He's just this person I used to know who turned out to be terrible, like a bad movie you walked out of halfway through. You don't spend years thinking about that movie. You just move on to better ones. That's surprisingly healthy. I have a very good therapist. Costs a fortune, but worth every penny. Therapy paid for by Barrett's settlement money? Obviously. Felt appropriate. We ordered another round of drinks. The night was warm. The company was perfect. And my life had rebuilt itself into something better than what I'd lost. Not perfect. Nothing's ever perfect. But mine. Genuinely, authentically mine in a way it hadn't been for years. My phone buzzed. Text from Quentin asking if I wanted to grab brunch tomorrow. I smiled and texted back, yes. New boyfriend treating you well? Jules asked. He's great. Emotionally available, honest, has all his shit together. It's wild. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, but my therapist says that's trauma response, and I should work on accepting that not everyone is secretly terrible. Reasonable advice. Who knew that basic human decency would feel like winning the lottery after Barrett? Jules laughed, but then got serious. Real talk, though. Are you happy? I considered the question. Happy. What a complicated word. Was I deliriously joyful every moment? No. Did I still have days where I felt bitter about the years I'd wasted? Sure. Did I sometimes lie awake at night wondering what signs I'd missed? What I could have done differently? Occasionally? But was I happy? Yeah, I was. I'm happy, I said finally. Not because everything's perfect, but because I'm living a life I chose instead of one that just happened to me. I'm dating someone who respects me. I have work I'm good at. I have friends who show up when I need them. I have a view of Lake Michigan and a closet full of clothes that make me feel confident and a therapist who calls me on my bullshit. That's happiness. Not the movie version. The real version. I'll drink to that. We clinked glasses again. Around us, Chicago hummed with Friday night energy. People laughing, music drifting up from street level, the city alive and vibrant and full of possibility. Somewhere in Schaumburg, Barrett was probably having a significantly less pleasant evening. Maybe scrolling through social media, seeing updates about my life. Maybe regretting his choices. Maybe still trying to justify them to himself. I didn't know. Didn't care. He'd become irrelevant to my story. Just a chapter that taught me valuable lessons about boundaries, self-worth, and the importance of actually paying attention to your own life. The best revenge isn't destroying someone. It's living so well they become an afterthought. Barrett had wanted to leave me for a better life. Instead, I'd left him behind for mine. You know what's funny? I said to Jules as we prepared to leave. Barrett thought he was the smart one, the one in control, the one who'd planned everything perfectly. But he forgot the most important rule of any strategy. What's that? I grinned. Never underestimate a woman who knows exactly how much you're worth and has access to your tax returns. Jules burst out laughing. That should be on a t-shirt. Or a legal brief. I could cite it as precedent. We left the rooftop bar arm in arm. Two women in our 30s who'd learned that life rarely goes according to plan. But that didn't mean you couldn't write a better ending. The city spread out before us, full of possibility and second chances and futures that were ours to build. Barrett had taken a lot from me. 8 years, $600,000 he'd tried to hide, the comfortable fiction of a happy marriage. But he'd also given me something, inadvertently, permission to become someone new, someone stronger, someone who didn't settle for dishonesty disguised as partnership. Was that worth 8 years of my life? Probably not. But since I couldn't get those years back, I might as well extract value from the lessons they taught me. And the biggest lesson? When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Then hire an excellent attorney and make sure they regret underestimating you. Life's too short for bad marriages and hidden assets, but it's exactly long enough for epic legal victories and waterfront condos. Turns out karma doesn't need much help when you've got good documentation and a forensic accountant with a vendetta against financial fraud. Barrett wanted a strategic exit from our marriage. I gave him an exit, all right. Just not the one he planned. The view from my new life is pretty spectacular. Thanks for the settlement money, Barrett. I'm putting it to excellent use.